Hey guys, so you just watched a time lapse of this digital painting go through. All in all, I think it was between 8 and 10 hours, 10 at the most. And I want to answer your question. So I made a post like a week ago or so, right on the YouTube community, and they came in. So that's what we'll be addressing today. But to get us started, I would like to say you can use any brush and tool that I've made in this video and get access to that for free, of course, just by going to my website and signing up for my newsletter. You'll get an auto email reply with updates of everything going on, including links to the brushes, tool presets, and custom shapes. And as I said in my Instagram post, I didn't make a lot of these brushes. You will see the sets named, this person did this set, this person did this set, because they're all kind of loaded in. I've customized the sets further, and I'm too lazy to change the name. So even though I've started with specific artists' brush sets, I've modified them basically from there. But let's get going. Now, Makara asks about my inspiration. He says, for complex works like this, how do you choose one? Well, for me, the initial inspiration was, of course, Ghost of Tsushima, because before my infant came along, that's the game I was playing, and I was just super into it. So I took a screenshot, in the early game, where I was like, wow, that blew me away. I have to do some kind of painting inspired by that. So basically from there, what I do is go and get the little references what I need after I draw my initial sketch up. So I drew my initial sketch, figured out, all right, literally I'm going to need trees, water, docks, koi fish, and various types of Japanese clad women. The next thing I like to do that I think a lot of people skip on is I get my art direction reference. So first up here I have a piece from Jason Schreier, a piece from Anton Fadib, a piece from Luca Pisano, and Maciej Siderwitz. They just kind of help me determine the art direction that I'm taking in regards to color, shape design, use of texture and pattern, and it helps influence my work toward a specific goal and direction. Obviously, if I didn't have something like that, if I just wanted reality, I would not include that and just try to make it as real as possible. Now, Makara also asked about some of the preliminary sketches and planning. Now, with the prep, nowadays, I prefer to just draw things out. For me, it's just quicker than jumping straight into color or straight into value, and I won't feel the urge to commit to the actual painting quite as early. My end goal is a painting and not a drawing, so I choose not to focus on making this part of the drawing look pretty. It's structurally functional at best. But of course, if you're doing final line art in your piece, you'd have to take considerable time cleaning up and up-resing it. With that established, I quickly do a few value roughs, and I do this based off that drawing, and I go in from background to foreground, shape after shape, figuring out the pieces of water, the various trees, to the waterfall and characters. Then with those shapes established, I can quickly use those as layer masks and light them with a giant airbrush tool. And then once that's established and I like the general direction, in this case I went dark on light or light on dark, you can go either way. I overlay some quick colors, and that's what you're going to be seeing up on screen right now is my quick color pass. Some people consider this to be a final. Generally you could just go in and paint it up from here, but I started over. I wanted clean, clear shapes and better layering structure. This was all on one layer. Sarah Wright, Lucas Piera, and Sensei Saitama were all asking questions in regards to composition. Learning composition is straightforward itself. It can be as easy as watching YouTubes. I have several, to reading books like Framed Ink by Marcus Mateo. You can stick to traditional conventions of composition, things like rule of thirds, leading lines, and grouping values. And these simple conventions do, take a while to master, but they're easy to put into play. All I'm really doing at this stage is forgetting the literal and thinking of everything as shapes, patterns, and rhythms. Again, this is the thing students don't quite understand and they will avoid doing too much later. I know I was there. So generally what my hand is drawing is more literal, right? Like trees or rocks. But mentally, I'm much more in an abstract state. I'm thinking of lines or circles or, silly things like that. I do make sure to follow conventions when I need to, but of course when you want to break them, that works as well. I like to have my lines flow and lead the viewer's eye around the composition. I do consider this a dance with the viewer to where the focal points are, and I try to surround my focal points with areas of rest and balance the overall detail in a scene like this using light. I use light to hide and obscure lots of the small, irrelevant aspects. I keep the focus where the image needs attention. So for example, I want the fish to pop, I make it the loudest element in the piece. This can be the lightest against the darkest, or it can be the most saturated against the dullest. There's a lot of ways to do that. There's loads of contrast. There's big and small. There's the angle. There's isolation. I have videos on that on YouTube as well. Now, Gio and Tally were asking, how do you render water? And I have got that question many times previously, right, on previous paintings. How do you render water? I kind of do it just like this, right? I drop in like a big marquee shape, right, the rectangle. I fill it with like a solid color to kind of start. Or in this case, I'm just using the airbrush to kind of set this foundation in. So in this particular painting, I'm going a little bit darker toward us in the foreground, a little bit lighter on the horizon. I just want that line to be barely visible back there to fill in the shape. So I'm really just using a lot of airbrush. See how like I'm going across that selection in the back just to get a little crisper of a line. Now I have green, right, that turquoise toward the middle, because I know, because I planned it out thoroughly, I'm going to have light there. When light goes through the water, like shallow water like this, it's, with the yellows and the blues, they're going to make some greens. The green's right in the middle. It's going to be bright, it's going to be saturated, so that's why I did that. And because the water is also shallow, that means if there's stones or mud or something down there, we'll probably see some of those objects. So I just make a layer on top of what I've already set for the foundation, and I start making these lighter, green turquoise types of shapes. These are going to be the sunlight hitting rocks that are very close to the surface. So I never start like on top of the layer structure, for thinking like sandwich. I lay a foundation and I build and build and build. So I'm building up, right, those shapes of rocks underneath the water at this stage. Now, once I've figured out and laid out my basic rock shapes that you guys can see there, I'm making a new layer above that on overlay. And I'm starting to imply that there's a little bit of reflection going on in the environment. So see, like I made a darker line where that tree is, for example. And because the layer's on overlay, it has a little bit of a bleed effect between everything that's going on in between there. Now what I want to do is a additional lighting effect on top of what I just did. So I just paint a bunch of blue lines like this, and this will be the skylight, the fill light of the sky, kind of, hitting the shadowy areas of that water. So I kind of just, again, I warp, I skew, I erase, I decimate this brushwork till it looks all right. Then I go through the layer palette and cycle through an appropriate blending mode that'll look all right with it. So see, I'm kind of go with vivid light, I'm leaning a little toward hard light, I'm kind of tinkering with that. And then I'll, lower that opacity and things like that just to make it a lot more subtle. And because it's not going to happen, in that direct sunlight quite a bit, I do want to save that color and that effect primarily for where the shadows are. So really when it comes to water, it's just kind of like a fairly systematic approach of layering these effects on top of one another. If you try to paint it all at once, you can do it, but it can get a little finicky and it can get a little tricky if you want to edit a specific part of it. So last but not least, we'll go over the color structure, as that was the most requested aspect that I received. Now, I do cover more of this and in greater detail in one YouTube video. I recommend, it's going to come up here, check that out. But essentially, as I said, my my initial inspiration was from this screenshot. So I know I wanted yellow trees, water, with accents of purple and stuff. And I think for the most part, I really captured that well. So, right, still, if we really squint at this, there's still like a lot of blues and greens. Like a lot of the painting hovers in this sort of zone on my color wheel right now. So see, that's somewhere like over, if we had to like put a pin on this map, right, somewhere about right there. That's where most of it is. So watch over here as I kind of eyedropper around most of this place. Do you see, like, even though this image is filled with color, life and movement, not a lot of these colors are saturated at all, right? Like everywhere I click, you really won't see it go, like, in terms of saturation beyond like this general little ring, right? Where about from here to here, right? That's max saturation in any given color. My image kind of hits at about 50% saturation for like 90% of the image. The places where you'll see color accents or things to get your attention is somewhere like on the fish. That's a very deep red, right? Clocking in over here at about 75%. Red's a very powerful color because you stick something red or orange. I mean, it really is a borderline between orange and red. The human eye is always going to go to that anyway, so it's a dirty trick. I knew it was going to work. But, you know, besides that, I figured like these two colors are, and there's loads of this, you know, in between as well. So it's a fairly tertiary color palette if we break that all down, right? I'm selecting a bit, right, of a trifecta there, my terrible looking triangle. But most, and I guess you could kind of call it like a split complementary, right? Like I'm using two colors that are kind of opposite, and then like there's a little bit of an accent, you know, right, kind of that it dips into up into there. But this works really well because, I mean, any color, right, that is opposite each other on the color wheel is going to be a safe bet. But all the neutral colors, right, that I made in the image are pretty much a combination of various blues, right, and purples. So when I was making a lot of my neutrals, which neutrals do account for about 70% of the painting, I was constantly just mixing, right, the yellows, the greens, and the purples. So see it, I'm trying to avoid making mud right now, but it was just really a combination of these. And that worked really, really well for this part of the segment. So you can just color pick. Complementary colors always do make for, right, really brilliant neutrals. So see, rather than going with, right, a flat looking gray, you know, of any kind of variety, I was mixing and blending colors. And that's really the trick of it. And so yeah, really the trick to making kind of anything is to have a plan, right? Do your reference, do your research, draft it out. Everybody's process is going to be different, so try different types of painting techniques that of course work for you, and build things up. Don't expect quick results. Just let the painting blow. Have a little confidence in it. It's going to look a little, every painting looks a little ugly for a little while. So guys, if you have any additional questions, please let me know down below. And again, my new course, How to Design a Picture, which covers all of this in a lot more depth, is now available. Links below. And you guys have a great summer. Oh, by the way, I get a little jet here. Let me do this recording, luckily for us. But yeah, time is short these days. Take care.